So let's begin with Scott's question. And Scott says, if I'm pulled over for drunk driving, should I refuse to take a breathalyzer test? A friend says that I should, but I'm just not sure. So Bubble, what should he do?
Well, I'm going to give you some quick answers, but I'm going to answer your question by saying, first, just give your name and address and your driver's license and whatever the officer needs for documentation. Don't talk anymore. Don't answer questions. You're not required to. If the officer then says, well, why aren't you asking my questions? Just shake your head. If the officer says, get out of the car, then you do need to follow that lawful order. At that point in time, the officer is going to ask you to do field sobriety evaluations or tests. Those are optional, voluntary. They're not scientific. If you're over 40, over half the people over 40 can't do them totally sober. So don't try to do those. You're not required to. There's no penalty. Then if you're cuffed and you have the handcuffs put on, the officer is going to read you something called the implied consent notice. That's a legal notice that's similar in every state. That's telling you if you don't take the test he or she is about to ask you for, then your license can be suspended for a full year if you refuse. So refusing may not be a good idea because you could be facing a full year without being able to drive. And so my advice is to ask the officer, may I call an attorney? I have the numbers with me on the phone. You're going to be told no. And at that point say, well, if I can't speak to an attorney, I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because I don't want to lose my license and I'm going to want an independent test.
Okay, that sounds like a lot that's going on right there with a person who might be quite nervous standing on the side of the road or in your car, because you said don't get out of the car. But it's good to know, just be quiet or say as little as possible and stay in your car as much as possible. Am I correct?
Just keep your mouth shut. Don't answer questions. Don't do field tests. That's simple. But once the cuffs are on, the officer may have made a grave error, because what evidence does the officer have that you're impaired? You didn't admit drinking. You didn't admit anything about where you've been or where you're going. And if the officer has no field test, he or she has really no evidence that's circumstantial evidence that could possibly convict you. So if you do go take your test, then a good lawyer may be able to keep the test out based upon several issues. One is you shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. And under the implied consent law, which was recently revised in 2019, we may be able to make a challenge to keep that test result out. But if you ask for an independent test, you can take that test in an adjacent county. For example, if you're in Bibb County, say I want to go to Forsyth County and have my blood drawn. And that's your independent test. It's for your own use, not for police use. So many times they don't want to take you out of county, but they have to do that. I won that case at the Court of Appeals about 20 years ago.